Hello guys, and surprise, surprise! More and more Russian regions say they do not like the so-called special military operation anymore. Millions who cheered for it back in 2022 now do not enjoy it after war returned back to their territories. And honestly, literally every day we can record a video talking about a separate city or region, which is a very important result of the Ukrainian resilience. But let's focus today on Belgorod, which is not just a war zone, but honestly a disaster zone. And now even their governor openly says how offended he and the region is on the Kremlin authorities. And also Sochi, once an extremely rich resort, the most popular resort in Russia, lost more than 30% of its tourists in 2025. And at the beginning of 2026, they already count minus 38. All because of the Ukrainian drone visits and super expensive flights. You know that most of the Russian civilian aviation is destroyed by Putin's economic mismanagement and Russia's isolation. So we may literally see the results of this war on each of the Russian regions. And today we will focus on these two. They are very different, but the conclusion they made at the beginning of 2026, the Kremlin does not care about them, and this war destroys them faster than they hope to destroy Ukraine. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, actually in Kyiv, and subscribe to demonstrate your solidarity, but most importantly, to know the truth from this part of the world and making your decisions or giving some advice about the potential negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, you need to know the truth. So let's begin with Belgorod, which is a war zone. It is one of the most destroyed Russia's regions because it is closely located to the front lines, and we can very much see the difference in the moods and attitudes of its governor, of its people, comparing the situation back in 2022 and now in 2026. I do remember tons of videos of that Governor Gladkov, who now openly speaks against Putin, and how he predicted that Kharkiv, a Ukrainian city, will soon join Belgorod region. But now it seems like Belgorod will sooner join us. That's exactly what many people comment below his videos, and I'm surprised to learn that a lot of Russians actually thought that Belgorod, Kursk was Ukrainian. They don't know the geography. They don't need new territories. That's pretty obvious. And when they see some problems happening and the government unable to protect the territory, they simply say, it's not ours, we don't care about this region. And now Gladkov reports that in his videos, perhaps another reason to block Telegram that will be completely banned in Russia since April. Definitely not a sign of strength and victories, but a desperate move to hide the truth and to prevent people from organizing protests. But right now, Gladkov uses it to say that he feels that people are very offended in Belgorod because they have no electricity, they have no heating, they experience constant air raid alerts, and they ask the Kremlin for more air raid defense, and they receive constant no's. This is perhaps something that makes them most angry, because in Ukraine we try to protect every inch of our territory, whether it's Kyiv or the smallest village. And we constantly talk about the need for more air defense systems. We develop our drones, interceptors, and other technologies. But in Russia, they simply say, we have other priorities. And that was actually the moment when the governor of Belgorod region spoke about these priorities, that perhaps protecting Russians in Belgorod should have been more important for the Kremlin than bombing Ukrainian kindergartens. But you see, Putin does not hear him. They want to silence more and more people, even those who were previously the supporters of Putin and the supporters of the so-called special military operation. But now when they feel it, when they taste it on their own territory, they actually feel very, very disappointed. And that Gladkov actually told a funny story that he was coming back from a business trip and the train was broken, very common for the modern state of the Russian Federation. And he asked someone to give him a lift, and nobody wanted, because they feel offended on the government, regional, and of course the central. The federal budget is empty, the priorities are different, air defense protects Putin's bunkers, or all the missiles are used to target Ukrainian infrastructure, forgetting that now more and more of the Russian regions are an active war zone. And here we return to another region that is located in a different part closer to the south and perhaps has one of the best climates in Russia. Sochi, Anapa were super popular resorts, and Putin had his own residences there. But perhaps for a couple of years already he does not show up in Sochi region, because he fears the Ukrainian drones, he fears for his security, and he does not change his attitude to this war. He does not change his attitude to the air defense of the Russian Federation. And this clearly exposes the vulnerability of Russia, that its big size actually plays against it, and that Putin was totally unprepared for the defense on his own territory, together with millions and millions and millions of Russians who kind of like the idea. So, according to the official reports, the region that, let's be realistic, it's on the shores of the Black Sea, it's super popular, it's perhaps the most visited Russian resort with previously extremely busy airport, and they said that in 2025 they lost 30% of tourists. That is a lot. Just imagine a similar situation in your resorts, and perhaps all the attention of the capital would be concentrated on how to solve this situation. But in Russia, they keep pretending that everything is okay. And in this first months of 2026, 38%, which means no income, more businesses have to close. And we need to remember the context that with such problems, the Kremlin keeps rising taxes, lowering thresholds for entrepreneurs, and rumors say that they will have more different taxes, because that's the only way to hide the negative balance of the Russian federal budget. But it will simply speed up the collapse of the Russian economy and then the collapse of the Russian Federation, and sums up for that. We may also say the reason why Sochi stopped being popular, apart from the Ukrainian drones that visit it very often for some important and legitimate missions, demilitarizing objects located nearby. But when drones travel the airspace, you have to close it, and approximately 40-50 drones per day visit the region around Sochi. For you to imagine the size of the special military operation inside Russia. Unbelievable, right? That is what we have to focus on when talking about the course of this war, and not keep demotivating Ukraine or setting some dates. It's so funny when Ukraine and the United States discuss the date when this war must end, when Putin is the one who began this war, the one who must end this war, or we should make him. And what are we to do here? Keep demilitarizing them. And also aviation collapse, civilian aviation collapse, absence of necessary parts to maintain the previously stolen from Western companies' aircraft, made this super expensive to travel and super dangerous. So honestly, these prices, they actually save perhaps a lot of the Russian lives, together with the Ukrainian drones that paralyzed the skies above the European part of the Russian Federation. It's actually for the better to those ordinary apolitical Russians that, trust me, now are not that enthusiastic about war anymore. This is an extremely important achievement of the Ukrainian army, that not only managed to stop the invasion and keeps the front line very steady, and after Starlink was switched off, actually we get more and more of our territories back. But we also brought war back to Russia where it belongs, and not to one region or two, but to dozens, including Moscow. And if you want to know more about the attitudes around Putin, subscribe to my Anna Danilchuk channel, where we spend a little bit more time analyzing still existing Russian Telegram channels, their military vloggers, and how they feel now after this war lasts longer than the Second World War for the Soviet Army. Also follow me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord, and of course join for my weekly newsletter on Substack. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. That's an honor, but most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Check our merch shop, lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and you know we need that. Same as you need Ukraine, strong, militarized, and we all know that the only working peace plan is to defeat and demilitarize Russia. United we stand. Slava Ukraini!